Data Design Interactive, a name synonymous with low-effort shovelware titles for the Wii. Data Design gets a lot of flack for their games for being terrible and way too similar to each other. A majority of their games use the same engine, same controls, same menus, etc. This is the most notable with their platforming games consisting of Ninjabread Man, Rock'n'Roll Adventures, Anubis II, and Trixie and Toyland. These games were originally released only in Europe for the PlayStation 2 between 2005 and 2007, and man, they should have just stayed there. A ton of games from DDI were ported over to the Wii with everyone's favorite type of control scheme, motion controls! Poorly implemented motion controls, I might add. And yes, I'm going to play through all 4 of these games today. And what a mistake that is. The only reason for that is because all of these games are practically the same, so separate videos would be pointless. And also playing all 4 of them in a row equates to one full game. You'll soon see why. Well, let's get started. Turn on the Wii, plug in the nunchuck, strap on that rubber band, and let's get ready for some bargain bin fodder. I'll start with Ninjabread Man first. It's probably the most well known out of these 4 games, and it's the first one I played like 8 years ago. So I can't wait to relive this game from my youth I tossed aside after I finished it. Oh, the memories I had. That being 0 of them. A little fun fact about Ninjabread Man is that it was originally supposed to be the 3rd game in the Zool series. The owners of Zool, Zoo Digital Publishing, were not impressed with the tech demo DDI made, so they lost the Zool license. I have no history with Zool, so I don't really know how the games play out, but they look okay, I guess. They would later finish the game as a standalone title, and that mess is what you see on the screen. Ninjabread Man is a 3D platformer where you run around candy-themed levels, fight a variety of dessert-based enemies, and collect blue cylinders. Yeah, the objective in each level is to collect 8 blue cylinders, which powers up this machine to transport you to the next level. It's so out of place in terms of the theme of the game, and there's no explanation for it. Before all that, however, we need some training on how to properly play. The control stick moves you around as you would expect, but Ninjabread Man moves way too fast and it can be hard to control. You can jump by flicking the nunchuck up in the air, and it works as well as you think it does. Yeah, it barely works. Well, luckily there's a trick to getting past this. Just press the Z button instead. Nowhere in the game or the manual it states that you can jump with the Z button, and I hope you learned that early because the rest of the game will be annoying without it. I wonder if the developers just put that in just to avoid using the motion controls during playtesting, and they forgot to remove it. Slimy bastards. You can swing the Wiimote to use Ninjabread Man's sword, and it rarely works. You can perform a jump slash, which is a lot more responsive, but it's harder to hit things. Lastly, you have ninja stars, which you can point and aim at the screen to throw. They start off really weak, but the more enemies you kill, the stronger it becomes. It's the only thing you should use when fighting off enemies because it actually works. When you take damage, however, it gets weaker, but it's easier to bring it back up. Like I said before, the main goal is to run around and find 8 blue cylinders and reach the end teleporter. Along the way, you'll be faced with the most horrifying of enemies, like cupcakes, jello, cake slices, and worst of all, the bees. The enemies don't really pose a threat because they only go after you when you're right next to them. The cupcake and the jello monsters just rush you down while the cake slice shoots projectiles. The bee is the only annoying enemy because it's small and flies around, and trying to hit it with the ninja stars just doesn't work sometimes. Killing an enemy has them drop a heart, which you can use to pick up and add to your health bar. If you get enough, you'll get an extra life. The extra lives are completely useless because they don't carry over to the next level, so there's no point in getting them. The levels are really boring with some of the most basic platforming obstacles you'll ever see. The platforming is only hard if you're still using the motion controls to jump. Nothing in the levels stand out is unique or interesting. They try having parts like in the second level where you have to memorize a path and walk across it correctly or you'll get hurt, but other than that, nothing is that interesting. The worst part of the levels is that there are only 4 levels in the whole game. That's counting the tutorial too. Yeah, after the 3rd level of the game just cuts back to the title screen. No final boss or cutscene, just a big middle finger that you wasted your time and money. Well, you could go back and replay the levels because you unlock 3 new modes after beating them the first time around. Score Pickups has you collect a certain amount of candy pickups in a level, Alongside the blue cylinders, hidden pickups is the same thing except they are far less defined, but they are in harder to find spots. And the time attack mode, you play through a level before the time runs out. None of these modes are worth playing the levels over again, so don't even bother. The graphics are ugly and look a slight step above a low-effort Nintendo 64 game. The music is the most generic sounding thing you'll hear, and it's featured in a number of other data design games as well. Overall, this game was just boring to play. Well, maybe the next game might be more engaging. Next up on the chopping block is Rock and Roll Adventures, and well, just take a look at it. It's literally the same exact game as Ninjabread Man. It has the same HUD, the same controls, and the same objective. Instead of blue cylinders, you're collecting records. Instead of fighting sweet desserts, you're fighting instruments like cymbals and drums. Instead of running through candy-themed levels, you're running through a Rockstar's fever dream. Now there are some differences. For one, the controls are slightly different. The motion controls for jumping seem to be a lot more responsive here. I still didn't use them because why the fuck would I not just use the Z button? In return though, swinging the Wiimote to use your guitar is way less responsive than it was in Ninjabread Man. I still use the projectile to take care of most enemies because fuck motion controls. The levels are a lot more linear and way easier to traverse. Most jumps are over solid ground, so you don't really have to worry about dying as much. This makes the game even more boring and easy to play in comparison, however. But hey, at least they added the ability to push things in this game. So that's something cool, right? Just like Ninjabread Man, there are only 4 levels, and the game just cuts back to the main menu after you beat the last level. It's literally the same exact thing. The graphics are a little bit more appealing than Ninjabread Man. It still looks like crap, but it's more appealing to the eyes at least. It doesn't make my eyes want to puke. The music is okay. It's the most low-effort, stock-sounding jazz, but it's way better than Ninjabread Man's music. Yeah, this game sucks too, and it's not worth your time. It was worse and more boring to play than Ninjabread Man. Well, I doubt the next game is going to be any better, but I can hope. Next up on the chopping block is going to be Trixie and Toyland. This game was actually released a year after the other 3 games featured in this video, so I wonder if it's going to be any better. Before I start this game, I want to show off this nice little message and drawing I got with this game. I doubt the person who gave me this game is watching, but I wanted to share it. Anyways, Trixie and Toyland is the same game mechanically as the other games. Big shocker. But hold on, what's this? More than 4 levels this time? That's a huge step up, so this might not be as shitty. Well, the tutorial is literally just a copy-paste of Rock and Roll Adventures, but besides that, the other levels are different. Something new about this game is that it actually has a plot. Well, the other 2 games had a plot, but it had no impact on anything. I guess you could say the same thing about this game, but at least it establishes a villain named Penumbra who stole a bunch of orbs and scattered them across Toyland, and Trixie has to collect them all. By the way, the plot to the game is on the back of the box. And the back of the box is the exact same on all 4 of these games. They really were that lazy when making these games, weren't they? Unlike Ninjabread Man or Rock and Roll Adventures, this game's levels are a lot less linear in design. There's a lot of vertical platforms and it leads to, I can't believe I'm going to say this, not all that bad of levels. Yeah, out of all of the games here, this is probably the only one that has the best designed levels out of the group. I actually sort of enjoyed the 3rd level chutes and ladders gimmick, going up and down to different elevations to find collectibles. I mean, they're not outstanding levels, but compared to this other shit, it's AAA stuff. The enemies in this game are just reskinned enemies from the previous game, except for this helicopter that shoots missiles, which is annoying to hit and the only enemy that gave me trouble. Strangely enough, the best way to take out enemies in this game is to jump into them. Yeah, apparently Trixie is Sonic the Hedgehog and can jump into enemies and kill them like they're nothing. The other games have this too, but it's unreliable. I'm glad too, because it makes it so I don't have to use the dumbass motion controls to fight anything. After each level, you're greeted to a bonus stage, where the objective most of the time is to get to the end without getting killed. There really isn't much of a point to these levels, considering the only thing you get for completing them is points. Yeah man, those points are really gonna help me get my gamer score up so I can show off to my 0 friends that play this shit. The final level actually has a boss fight. Penumbra here shoots a bunch of lightning bolts, but they're pretty easy to avoid. He's also pathetic as fuck because I beat him just by jumping into him repeatedly. Wow. How anticlimactic. As in the tradition of these games, beating the last level sends you right back to the title screen. Why did I expect something different here? The game looks more visually appealing than Rock'n'Roll Adventures and Ninjabread Man, but it still looks like a higher resolution Nintendo 64 game. The music fucking sucks. It uses the same exact music from Ninjabread Man. Every level uses the same exact music track, that being the tutorial level music. The only other music is the main menu music, which you're only going to hear for like 5 seconds. They couldn't add a few more songs to the mix? I got real sick of this stupid song after playing through these games. Overall, Trixie and Toyland is the least offensive game out of the lot here. I still don't recommend you play it because you're better off playing, well, you know, a good platforming game. Now on to the last game, finally. Anubis II? Well, the title is actually supposed to read as Anubis II. Is this the second coming of Anubis, or some child Anubis had no one knew about? Sorry, KibiChet. Maybe you'll get your own game soon. Anubis 2 has the same amount of levels as Trixie, but half of them are going to be bonus levels. The bonus levels this time around are all the same. You need to lure these scarabs into the fire pits and survive till the end. It sucks and it's boring to play. You don't really get anything out of it, and by the time I was at the second one, I just kept killing myself just to continue on with the game. Well, that's nice to see. The tutorial level is just a reskin of Ninjabread Man's tutorial stage. They really copy and pasted this shit twice for 2 different games? What, was it so hard to make 4 different tutorial levels? The levels this time around are more visually interesting, but they still fall into mediocrity. We're back to the linear level design of collecting pyramids and killing various Egyptian-themed enemies. The enemies actually have more health in this game, which almost got me into some trouble, but the power of a fully upgraded projectile and standing 5,000 feet away from them makes quick work of them. This game does introduce new mechanics like waving the Wiimote around to turn platforms around. Well, when it decides to work at least. Anubis can also throw bombs by holding down the A button and flicking the Wiimote forward. It covers a lot of ground, but I found them very hard to use, so I didn't really bother most of the time. Anubis' levels do have more interesting set pieces, like exploring inside of a giant temple leading into a lava-filled room. There are other little landmarks, like these destroyed ruins or this area with platforms moving across other platforms. Okay, well, I didn't say they were fantastic areas. Look, I'm grasping at straws here. Talking about all 4 of these games in a row is making me go insane. It feels like I'm beating a dead horse. This game does sport a final boss, and he fucking sucks. While the final boss in Trixie was a joke, Mumhotep here is annoying as all hell. In order to fight him, you need to throw the hard-to-use bombs at him 3 times. You need to jump up invisible platforms and grab the bomb at the end. Like I said, throwing the bombs is hard to do since it involves motion controls and it barely fucking works. Sometimes I would overshoot the bombs, or sometimes I would just activate the dumb staff wave thing instead. Yeah, fuck this boss, but at least I beat him just by the skin of my teeth. Congratulations, you have defeated the evil Khufu. Wait, who the fuck is Khufu? Was it him? I thought I was fighting Mumhotep. You know, the guy that was mentioned on the back of the box. Fuck this game, it's terrible. Looks like shit and the music is the same generic crap in all the other games. Oh man, that was a rough time. So, in conclusion, all of these games were terrible. They're all just exact clones of each other with only visual differences. The controls are terrible, the graphics suck, and the music is the same repetitive shit. Like, what was the point of splitting these games up into 4 separate games? I know why, of course, to make more money. All 4 of these games complete in the box cost me just a bit over $30. Yeah, $30 well spent. The only game that was slightly enjoyable, and I mean slightly, was Trixie and Toyland due to the non-linear structure. All 4 games combined only clocked in a total of 3 hours of game time. Ninjabread Man and Rock'n'Roll Adventures only took half an hour to beat each. Like, what the fuck? But look, if you have $30 to spend, just buy a Hat in Time instead. A cute, fun platformer with a ton of variety. It's not split up into 4 separate games, each with a retail price of $20. Fuck you, data design, and your shitty, dysfunctional shovelware garbage.